Where was your first big financial home run early on?
In crypto,
No, in general. And life.
e-commerce. Yeah.
So, but where was it like your life changed the first time? Was there a moment, point in time? Where
I mean, I would say early on at that point, it would be when I started investing in crypto properly. It was the DeFi run of 2019.
was there a story or a day where you were like, holy shit?
Yeah, of course. So there was this token known as PancakeSwap. And PancakeSwap was this DeFi platform on the Binance Smart Chain. And do you remember Clubhouse? The fad of Clubhouse. So Clubhouse was popular at the time before Spaces was on Twitter. Creators would congregate there and converse. One time, CZ, the owner of Binance, was on a call and I tuned in, and then the community had access to asking questions. And because I was aware that, he'd built the Binance Smart Chain, that DeFi was the narrative because of Uniswap and because of Ethereum, and because because CZ and the owner of Uniswap had a little bit of a fight on Twitter going back and forth, I asked him, hey, what do you know about PancakeSwap? I got the ability to ask him a question, and he kind of gave some clues as to his involvement or understanding that this project was legit, that it was out of a docs team that they interacted with. So he gave me confidence. So I said, okay, this coin is sitting at a $25 million market cap. Let me buy 1% supply for $250,000. At that time, they had some crazy yielding programs and things like that. People that are aware of crypto or native to the space don't know what it is.
You put 250K in.
250K, and I made about $5.5 million over the course of a year and a half on that specific play. Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty nice.
Was that the first time that you were like, holy shit?
I mean, that's the play where I'm
life looked different,
where I'm realizing this is going to happen more often. This is going to repeat itself because you're getting the ability to invest into real companies that generate real revenue without having to go through a middleman, without having to go through a bank, without having to go through the stock market. The business, now many of them are not legit. They're just leveraging, Ponzi's or scam coins or presidential coins we've been seeing recently, versus the ones that have real product, generate real revenue, and decide to tokenize their community. These products and these companies will begin to surface more and more. And I think that what I realized was this product that worked, this model will be repeated because the founders, the company made a lot of money. So somebody that's clever, somebody that's cheeky says, hey, if I'm going to raise money, instead of going to a bank, let me just raise it from my community through a token, or let me have a token that represents our community. So I realized that, leveraged that, got into DeFi, did extremely well last bull run. And what's your beginning of the journey?
What's your philosophy on taking profits? Changes?
It changes all the time. It changes depending on the cycle. It changes depending on your portfolio. It changes depending on what type of money you're using to invest. If you're utilizing money that you need to survive, then you should be taking profits all the time. If it's money that you're growing, well, the market's going to swing and the market is going to do different things. As long as you hold high conviction plays and you know what you own, and you know why you own it, not because your financial manager told you, not because a YouTuber said this and that. You're the one that's clicking the green button. And people ultimately have to assume that responsibility that, you can hear a lot of information, but ultimately you're the one that needs to take that information and decide what's the best play for you. So crypto seemed like the highest leverage opportunity at the time, and it turned out to be correct. E-commerce is the highest leverage opportunity on the internet to build a business.
So you basically like are leveraging leverage on leverage. Like what I mean by that is like, for example, when you create capital to begin with, you create community on top of that. You now have the two mechanisms by which everything else can continue to scale and keep itself looping, and it just keeps on going.
Yeah, and you take your money and you multiply it. Just the idea of creating wealth, multiplying wealth, and then preserving wealth. And then the preservation part of wealth comes from that high tier network of entrepreneurs. So in order to preserve wealth, you need to create alliances. And you create alliances and you buy assets, you build portfolios together. So now wealth preservation is about studying a new way of thinking. Creating wealth is a mindset. Multiplying wealth is a mindset, but keeping money is a completely different mindset.
Did you ever struggle with that?
Of course. I went bankrupt twice.
Twice?
Yeah. Of course. I mean, if you have $2 million and you go to, 50 grand,
How did you do it twice in a short amount of time?
E-com. So with e-commerce, you go from drop shipping to
over leverage
you become really secure in a specific product. You order too much inventory. If you order too much inventory, your money is stuck in that inventory. So you have no ability to scale. And if your inventory is stuck, you're KO'd. So what happened was my warehouse in China got flooded. So I had all my supply ruined. Who's going to pay for that? It's not insured.
Yeah.
I have to pay for that. Liquidated me.
How much was it?
It was like $250K.
Wow.
Yeah, $250K and stuff.
And you had to file bankruptcy?
Well, not bankruptcy. Just
you
make more money.
Yeah. But you were saying that it would have been that bad twice, though.
Never bankruptcy. I don't think I've gotten to the point where I've been to zero, but I would say going from $2 million down to 80 or 40 or 50 is pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
But then you start it back again. It's just products, testing, repetition. It's happened to multiple people multiple times in e-com, specifically when it comes to payment processing holds. I've had PayPal hold up to $2 million of mine for a year and a half. Unbelievable. Payment processing holds, they're a bitch. And then supply chain issues. Both of these things are massive bottlenecks. They put people in a lot of financial strains many, many times.
What do you think is the biggest challenge with payment processors? Because so many brands, here's why I ask, because this is a side quest from an entrepreneurial perspective. You have a lot of these platforms that are trying in fintech to, you have, WAP, you have Stripe, PayPal. Everyone has these different issues, fees. What do you think is the ultimate payment processor? And how do you think that will ever exist? Or do you think that's what crypto's here to do?
So when I launched Ecom Society, I wrote 2 essays, specifically around what I found to be the 2 most important elements of e-commerce. One was product research, and the second one was payment processing.
Yes.
So me and one of my partners, we wrote a payment processing PDF. And this payment processing PDF, we probably can find it on the internet somewhere. It's probably already leaked. Find the product research one as well. But most people don't understand how payment processing works. They think that they're just entitled to process payments. You're not entitled to shit. You process payments under the guise that you're somebody that isn't high risk, that the product that you're selling isn't high risk, that your refund rate is pretty low, that your chargeback rate is good, that your supply chain and that your product isn't a scam. So today, more than ever, payment processing companies have to deal not only with their own regulation, but the regulation of, first of all, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, but then you have banks and the bank regulations. And then on top of that, you have government regulations. I've been able to sit down with owners of banks. They say, hey, in order for me to even change the color of a button on my website, I need to file paperwork. There's a lot of regulation. So that translates down to us as merchants. That translates to us as sellers. So there's a set of rules that you need to follow. If you go to Stripe's terms and conditions, they literally say we can cancel and terminate your account at any time for any reason. Is that the type of partner you want? But why do you use Stripe? Well, because you haven't thought of a better way. That's why in Ecom Society, we literally created a portal with all of the best payment processors that we know, both in the US and in Europe, boutique, because it's all about access. So do you think that somebody that has access to the owners of Stripe get treated the same way as somebody that is just an irrelevant account?
Good point.
Do you think that that person will have their Stripe account shut down or their funds held? No, because they have trust. Just like a big payment processor like Stripe, which equals in retail Walmart, you could have a small bank or a small processor that equals your mom and dad pop shop or your local grocery store, where you can actually ask for things to be delivered and you can give recommendations, and there's a better relationship that can be built. Payment processing is the cornerstone of your business. If you don't have good payment processing, good checkout, you're screwed. If you're running high risk offers, high ticket offers, you need to have other vehicles to collect payment, whether it's crypto, whether it's wire, whether it's Zelle, things of this nature. credit card is good, but ultimately the payment processor is what will determine your success in business, because if they hold your money, you're screwed. If they decide not to process, you're screwed. Let's say you make $1 million a year in revenue. Just in revenue. Let's say you have a 2.9% credit card fee. You could have a private processor give it to you for 1.9%, saving you 1%. 1% of $1 million is $10,000. That 1%, that difference is money in your pocket.
Right.
That's leverage, right? You need to be able to capitalize on that discrepancy. Most people in business, they leave so much money on the table because they don't form relationships with their partners. They don't form relationships with every vertical in business. Everything's so automated. Everything's so robotic that people forget that on the other side of the screen, there's actual humans that can solve their problems. If you just relate to them, go out, associate with them, make sure that they know that you exist, and build a bridge of trust.
And you have an A team to manage all this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you off the podcast my payment processing strategy, because now when it gets to finance and stuff, it gets a little bit tricky. But yeah, I have my own financial team. I have my own investment team, and I have my investment portfolio, my family office, and collectively we kind of just play around.